Welcome to the Hedgehog Watchdog special episode again tonight. It's our candidate series, and Greg Baldwin joined by Devin Saxon. And then on the show tonight, we have two candidates from Iowa that were running for governor and lieutenant governor. We got Rick Stewart, who's the candidate for libertarian candidate for governor, and then we got Marco Battaglia. Is that how? Right Battaglia.
Yep.
And he is running for lieutenant governor on the ticket with Rick. Welcome to the show, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself to your viewers. And
I'm glad you guys could make it. I've been watching you guys' campaign. I think you guys have been doing a really good job. You guys have really strong libertarian messaging, really principled messaging. I've actually watched, you guys have ran previously, and I watched some of those earlier campaigns. Is how I kind of knew about you before you guys even got the ticket for governor and lieutenant governor. But like I said, I think you guys got good messaging. And other libertarian candidates, including our own up here, can probably learn a little bit about how to have a good, strong message, but it can appeal to more than just our base, I would say. But so you guys are no strangers to running for office. Rick, you ran in 2020? What have you ran for before? Sorry, we'll just do that.
I started in 2014, ran for U.S. Senate. 2016 ran for my local Lynn County Sheriff. 2018 ran for Secretary of Agriculture. 2020 ran for U.S. Senate again. So I have the honor of having been beaten twice by Joni Ernst. Nobody else can say that. Okay, I'm the only one.
Nice. Yeah, so it would have been 2020 when I kind of learned about you. You were at the national convention down in Orlando, and you were going around handing out, maybe there were rack cards or there were business cards, whatever they were. But it was really straightforward and to the point, but it was also very libertarian. So I liked everything you said. My only regret is that maybe you don't live in South Dakota and you guys aren't our candidates up here.
Can I interrupt? You're fading out on me and then coming back in. Marco, is it the same with you, or is it just my speakers or something?
If you got headphones, maybe that would.
Ooh, that's my bad. Let me put headphones in.
Oh, that's all right.
I usually have a headphone, so maybe there's some echo.
Or I didn't know if Rick had it. Maybe that would be it.
I didn't get the echo, but both you and Marco had faded way down to not audible, and then you came back, and I don't know why.
Everything's good on my end, but
might just be a little glitch in the internet.
Never. Really?
Very well.
Not China again.
Oh, this goofy thing. No, I usually have a headset, so maybe that's part of the problem here. Testing.
You sound good to me.
All right.
Oh, I can't even.
All right, we're back.
Okay.
Oh, you can't hear us now?
No, I heard you. I didn't hear Rick. Test, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear everybody.
I got everybody.
All right. Sorry about that.
That's
So
all right.
all I was saying was I first learned about you, Rick, as a candidate in 2020. You had pretty good messaging when in that race. How did you guys? So talk us through how did you become a team, maybe, and how did you go about winning the Libertarian nomination in Iowa?
Marco, why don't you jump in and start on that?
Sure. So I've been doing my best to get to local, state, national events for over a decade now. And, Rick is one of the people that I've seen consistently out there, both in front of the scenes as a candidate and behind the scenes, just actually doing the work. So, I had an early level of respect for that. And I knew we had some shared goals, big ones being like ending the war on drugs and reducing the tax burden. And honestly, with everything that's going on right now, between the way that would reduce violence and reduce the burden on people's pocketbooks, those were two things that were really important. So I was happy to team up with Rick, and Rick actually let his team decide who his running mate was going to be. And then we went to our state convention and they nominated us unanimously. So I felt pretty good about that. And here we are.
Was there anybody else running in that race? Was it contested at all?
I think there might have been some people that thought about it, but no one else showed up to say, throw their hat in the ring.
So just quick question about how you guys go about nominating. So do you guys is that a convention nomination? Or do you guys have to go out and petition to get signatures? I know the party in general had to get signatures, but did you as candidates?
We chose to do both so we would have the blessing of our state party, but really what we would have had to do either way was get signatures for our ballot access.
All right. And you guys were successful in that endeavor.
Yeah, in the last cycle, we did have a primary for governor, and I took part in that against Jake Porter. And, we're actually still, really good partners and friends, and he endorsed our campaign.
Yeah, that was actually where I heard about you the first time, was in that 2018 race running against him. And then you went on, what'd you end up running for?
I got nominated at the convention to take on Iowa's eternal Attorney General Tom Miller, who's been in there longer than any state attorney general in the history.
Jeez.
Nice. We got a problem with South Dakota where you have to be an attorney to run for attorney general. Is that true in Iowa or not?
It came up, certainly, and the way I addressed it was been in jobs that require me to have a vast knowledge of the law for many years now, over a decade. And no, short answer is you don't have to be. It's a political position. And if you get the most votes on election day, you take over that office until the next election.
If you think about it, you don't have to be an auditor to be the state auditor either.
Right.
Or a surgeon to be the surgeon general for the national government.
So now from that new regulation, we got a pickle where in South Dakota where there's literally nobody running against the Republican candidate for attorney general because nobody qualifies. And that guy's basically just on the ballot with no competition whatsoever.
Yeah, I hate to see that at any level. I honestly hate to see a libertarian primary with one person in it. I like to see competition and debate, and it doesn't mean things got to get nasty, but let's make each other better candidates.
Yeah, if I can just jump in and backtrack to the joke I was in the middle of telling, you don't have to be a governor to be the governor either. Kim Reynolds has proven that.
Yeah, we got our own problems up here with our governor too. So how similar are Iowa and Nebraska and South Dakota? Like, we have a real problem, especially this year. I don't know if it's ever been this bad, but their are just like a record number of seats in the legislature going unopposed. The Democrats hardly exist up here, and there's like 20 Senate seats where there's no competition, and the Republicans are just gonna waltz in there. And our legislature, you only need 24 for a supermajority in the Senate, so they basically are having it with no competition. Anyway, what's the landscape like down in Iowa?
Well, we've got 70 uncontested seats this year out of 125. That would be 30 Republicans are not competing in a race, and 40 Democrats are not competing in a race. So, I mean, I can do the math.
Yeah, that's
70 divided by 250, right? It's over 1 in 3. So yeah, people they don't run if they don't think they can win, and there are a lot of individual districts where anybody who's rational and knows how to do the arithmetic can say, "Oh, the Republicans going to win." They could nominate a French poodle, and they would still get elected. And then there's ones where the Democrats are going to win.
yeah.
So if you look at that across the state, we have 100 House and 50 Senate districts. You scratch your head. You go, well, I mean, it's not that strange that there's a bunch of Republicans live in one area, usually rural, and there's a bunch of Democrats that live in another area, usually urban. And so why would you run if you know you're not going to win? I mean, I know my local race here, where I live in the urban area, my House rep, she's unbeatable. Well, actually, she's moving up. But she's been unbeatable. Now she's going to be unbeatable as a senator, my state senator.
She at least had a primary opponent. At least a lot of these people don't even have that.
No, she swamped her primary opponent. So yeah, I mean, the fight was in the primary. She won, I don't know, 85%, something like that. So I mean, I don't know if it's a problem if a district, not Congress, but a House district is just, they always like Democrats and they don't elect Republicans and vice versa. But I will say this, I think it's a problem when you don't have a strong third party, because there's strong third party. For instance, in our race, we already know who's going to win the governor's race. It's Kim Reynolds. Deidre DeGier is behind by 8 points, and she's not going to make it up, period. End of game. It's already been played. The Democrats aren't giving her any money. And the reason they're not going to give her any money is because when they gave Fred Hubble money 4 years ago, he spent $20 million and he lost.
Yeah. Wow.
Why would they give $20 million to her when she's going to lose?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. But if you have three parties, right? Like this is the magic possibility in this race that Marco and I are in this year, is we might be able to pull enough votes away from Kim Reynolds to give the election to Deidre DeGier. It's a super stretch, but if I were a Democrat, I'd be giving half my money to the Stuart Battaglia ticket, because with very small amounts of money, we can strip votes away from the Republican. And that's what the whole country needs. Minimum of three parties. You can't just have two, because we've already proven two parties sucks.
Well, yeah.
If you like what you got, well, okay, enjoy it.
What I've found really interesting campaigning around the state is you hear, a lot of people that are vocally very upset with governance, but then, where they're from, they go and vote for the same people that are in power. It's just a weird dynamic that we're trying to, talk to people wherever we go, letting them know there is another way than to just keep getting upset with your results over and over every election cycle.
You could if you just did ranked choice voting, you could change that whole thing.
Well, the media kind of doesn't get it. I had an interview in May with the big news station up here talking about our candidates, and actually two interviews, and they kind of both say the same thing. They're always like, well, it's kind of almost a dickish comment, but they're like, what's the point of running candidates if you can't win? And there's just a million different reasons that you could run a candidate regardless of winning. And the one thing I always like to point out is like you guys, a couple, the big thing I've heard you guys talking about is like the war on drugs and things like that. It's like, okay, win or lose, these guys are going out there and they're putting a message out there, and it's a message that nobody else is putting out there. And so you can make it a conversation point that where it wouldn't be one if you weren't in that race. Um, and I mean, you could go on reasons why,
There's
you know.
there's that. Another big thing in Iowa is, if we get 10%, we get anything over 3%, that really hurts the idea of a two-party system, because our party, becomes recognized again. And it'll be the first time a statewide ticket has caused that to happen. So if we get to the point where, a state ticket does that every other cycle, and then the presidential ticket does it, on the other cycle, then we've dismantled the two-party system once and for all.
Do you guys have to qualify every 2 years then, from the sounds of it?
It's every cycle. The top of the ticket is how it works in Iowa. So in our race, the gubernatorial vote total, and then when the presidential election year, it's whatever that ticket does. So Garrett Johnson and Weld achieved that for us for the first time in history, and I feel very strongly that we'll achieve that for us for the first time for a state ticket.
Yeah, that'd be great to keep it going. That's one thing. Us as a state party up here, in the decades prior, we've lost ballot access, gained ballot access, lost it, and it's just really been hard to get any traction going, especially like with our registered voter totals. But yeah, since 2016, we've been lucky enough. Gary Johnson kept us ballot access in 2016 with his vote total, and then some of our state candidates in 2020 kept us going. Technically, Joe Jorgensen got us enough too, but some of our state candidates, including Devin Saxon here, he got 5% running for Public Utilities Commissioner, which was pretty good. So Marco, I had a couple questions. I wasn't sure Rick was going to join us tonight, so I kind of had a couple questions for you. But it kind of sounds like you have an interesting job. Can you tell us about that? And then, how has that shaped your opinion on, say, the criminal justice reform and stuff?
Long story short, when I was running for attorney general, I worked in financial crimes, and my employer gave me an ultimatum to drop out of my race or to walk. And I at that point, there was a lot of responsibility that I took on, and I couldn't, my principles wouldn't allow me to back out. So I had my second boy on the way, and so it was difficult at the time. And I just knew that corrections in Iowa were really struggling to keep staffing. So I wanted to see what was really going on. I've been a correctional officer now for this is my 4th year, and if anything, it's just strengthened my views that I was championing in the gubernatorial primary and the election cycle before that. Really, that I've had since a voting age. There's way too many people in there for things that I think most Iowans would really agree that it's a waste of taxpayer money to house most of these people. And I think we need people like me in positions like this that don't love authority, don't love telling people what to do. We like to, teach people about their rights if they maybe aren't super strong on them, and hopefully get it so they get out and don't come back. Like, that's the goal that I'm always working on. And, just keeping people safe. So a lot of people do ask me, like, how do you reconcile, libertarian views with working in such a place? And that's what I say. Like, you want people like us working in every state job that you feel like we should still have, because those are the people that aren't going to trample your liberties, not going to trample your rights, and they're going to respect you. And but yeah, to me, let's get as many people out of here, like especially nonviolent drug offenders. Let's start with that. And, we pay, I'm curious to see what the numbers will be on the Department of Corrections website with inflation, but it's over $40K a year right now to house someone for a year. And does anyone really see the value in housing someone that maybe has a number of marijuana related charges in 2022? Like, what is your rehabilitation for someone that's using marijuana as medicine? Okay, don't do drugs that are helping, helping you live a better quality of life. Doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I totally wasn't even thinking about that inflation aspect because yours it's a women's prison, isn't it?
Yep, I work at the only women's prison in Iowa, which is, you see a lot of people that are there, maybe because they're houseless and they don't see a better option. They don't get chances. So you see a lot of the system failures in real life, in real time. Like, okay, this person came back because there's no community support for them in this area of Iowa, or this person came back because they relapsed and dropped dirty. And, to me, this is something we don't even think you should be criminalized for to begin with. And now
Mm.
taxpayers are paying over 40K a year to house you another year in, behind bars.
Yeah, South Dakota, same situation. They have one women's prison. I haven't looked up the numbers in a couple years, but when I ran for state legislature, I looked up those numbers, and it's like 70% of the women that are in our prison are in there for drug-related crime, offenses. And at the time, again, I not factoring inflation now, but at the time it was like $28,000 a year to house those women, and most of them women are in there, for drug, nonviolent crimes. It's
Yeah,
pretty
it's
sad.
sad. I mean, and this is, a lot of times people that have children that should be out there raising their kids, and just this idea that no matter, it should be case by case basis, right? Like some people, if you're doing harm to your kids, sure, but it, people can use any number of scheduled items and not be causing harm to anyone.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the big issues is there's an assumption that just because somebody uses a drug, that just automatically makes them a detriment
Yep,
to
bad
society and to their
person,
kids,
immoral.
and
Yeah.
and it's just not true. Most people probably work with somebody that's a high functioning drug addict of some sort, or alcoholic, or I mean, we always see that.
One thing I've been saying is I want all Iowans to have the same chances that you get if your last name's Reynolds or Branstad. So these people have had family members. They've been in the system themselves, and they got second chances. And the governor actually talks about it all the time when it comes to alcohol, but hasn't changed her tune yet in terms of marijuana.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask you guys, since you mentioned marijuana, what is the status of like the marijuana laws? What's the status of like reform? I know you guys have a medical program, but my understanding it was one of the most restrictive in the
Mhm.
country. Maybe you guys could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's horrible. Basically, we've created this. We've told basically two companies. One is owned by one man that you can grow this cannabis plant, and you have the freedom to do that. And the other millions of people that live in Iowa, you can still get booked over a handful of the plant. I've had friends and I've had a number of people I'm close to in the last year still get arrested for just a very small amount of marijuana. And these were like friends' kids that, while they were 18, 19, and now you're putting this person in the system. And this is how a lot of people get into the institutions, into the systems. You get picked up and actually booked. And, one interesting hypocrisy that I like to point out is, they tell us that these things are discretionary, and there's actually laws on shooting off fireworks that they choose not to follow up on constantly in Des Moines. And I would love to see the law enforcement choose not to book people with small amounts of drugs, but we're not there yet. But you got to fight at all levels for real change there. Like county attorneys need to be on the same page. So that's why all these elections are important. You know, your local elections. That's why I ran for city council on a decriminalization platform. And now back to state level. Like, we're going to have to get the legislature to move on these things, which I think the logical first step is to legalize cannabis and expand the hemp market. And then realistically, we'd have to start working on the other unscientifically scheduled substances item by item. Like Rick has had an interesting experience fighting for psilocybin freedom here recently.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear about that. We'll pivot to you, Mr. Stewart. I actually wrote an article on our website, Hedgehog Watchdog, when it happened. But you were arrested recently in D.C. protesting at the DEA, which just made me love you as a candidate even more. If you want to talk us through that and what you're fighting about and what it was all about.
Yeah, there's nothing like getting arrested to make people love you.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say it's the first time I've been arrested, but I will also just insert this. My first career was law enforcement. So I went from being a long-haired hippie hitchhiking around Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. And then 30 days later, I was a short-haired uniformed police officer in my hometown. So I've had feet on both sides of that line, and I think that really is useful for me. Because I understand the mentality of a law enforcement officer, because I was one and because I worked with a bunch of them. And here's the thing that, Marco mentioned discretion. Any kind of a crime where you have the discretion of, do I want to arrest this guy or do I want to let him go? That's a really bad law. So we have a whole bunch of those. But the marijuana one, and let's just set aside all the other drugs, the marijuana one, the police officer does have the discretion. The police officer looks at the kid or the guy or the girl and says, oh, is it worth my time to arrest him? Do I like him? Maybe they give me a little bit of lip, so I'm going to book him. This is the worst kind of law. Can you imagine, if just take a bank robber? It's like, well, I don't know if I want to arrest him or not. He's a nice guy. He robbed the bank, but I mean, I know his dad. And so let's just cool it here. Just he can go, right? That's a non-discretionary offense. And violence and theft are always non-discretionary. Smoking pot, being drunk, making a ruckus, those are discretionary laws, and the discretionary laws are really wrong for law enforcement, because you do not want to put discretion into the hands of law enforcement. Now, that has unfortunately been misinterpreted to mean that, if the law enforcement has any suspicion that there's a crime in place, right, such as I'm walking on the sidewalk and I'm drunk, that's public intoxication. So they're like, well, we don't have any discretion. We're just going to arrest this guy. And what you get is this complete overflowing number of arrests, that there's this thing that builds and builds and builds. And pretty soon law enforcement's mentality changes. And I've seen that since I was in law enforcement 40 years ago. I've seen how the mentality has changed, where they just arrest everybody. And then it's, so what if it costs in Iowa $40,000 to put them in prison? We're just going to arrest everybody, and we don't pay the bill. It's not us. And I want to tell one story, and this is very close to South Dakota, so maybe it's appropriate. But there's a guy in Lamar's, Iowa, Plymouth County, right way up in your neck of the woods. He was a
Blue
deputy.
bunny. It's a blue bunny.
Yeah, he was a deputy sheriff, right? And he after his fourth kid was born, he got a vasectomy, and the doctor gave him not a bottle, just 20 hydrocodone pills. And it turned out that the guy liked the hydrocodone pills a little bit too much, and he started using them too often. And then, of course, he ran out of prescriptions, and so he started doing a bunch of stuff which is definitely bad. I mean, he started when they went on a raid in a house, and he'd snatch the the opioids out of the medicine cabinet and put them into his pocket. And then he started taking them out of the evidence lockers. And he actually stole opioids from 5 pharmacies. I mean, this guy went down the rabbit hole, right? For 9 years. Now, let me just explain. For 9 years, nobody knew he was doing this. So his boss, the sheriff, was perfectly satisfied with his work. No indication of bad work. His family never knew. His 4 kids never knew. His wife never knew. He was a perfectly good father. He was an excellent community member. He was actually the head of the DARE program in that sheriff's office. But he was addicted. He addicted himself to opioids. So finally he got caught because, that's what happens if you are in the underworld long enough and you're doing stuff like robbing pharmacies, you get caught. And so they case was going to trial just like a month or so ago. And he finally pled guilty because he was guilty. And the judge gave him, I always, when I tell this story, I ask people, how many years did he get in prison? He was a cop, right? How much time did he get? Give me a guess. Devin, how much time?
I want to say 8 months.
How much time, Greg?
Well, you would think if it involved pharmacies, it would be at least like 5 or 10 years, but
Marco, do you already know the answer on this?
No, I don't. I'm going to guess 1 year.
Yeah, 40 years.
40?
They gave him 40 years. This guy needs to be, an example needs to be made out of this guy. He's just a heinous criminal. He's betrayed the trust of law enforcement, of the community, of everybody. And he should never see his family again. 40 years in the slammer, which costs in Iowa, back when it was only $35,000, $1.4 million. Let me put that in perspective. $1.4 million is the entire budget of the Plymouth County jail for an entire year. It's big money. And that jail is not a tiny little jail. It's not a corner jail. It's a big jail. It holds 70 people. Okay. And how about the Lamar's Public Library? Well, that $1.4 million is 2 times the annual budget of the Lamar's Public Library. They're taking 2 years of public library away, and so that they can punish a guy who was fine on the job. He was fine with his family. His only problem was he couldn't buy the pills that he had addicted himself to. He didn't display any behavior that was negative other than getting pills. This is the craziness that you get when you start a drug war.
Yeah.
Fanatical, insane, hysterical reaction to something, which, by the way, just so you know, I checked out how much his pills would have cost if he bought them without insurance. If he could just buy his hydrocodone pills, right? Like I checked out how much do these cost online if you don't have insurance. They're 15 cents a piece. It's just like this, for 15 cents, he could have taken 10 of these a day for $1.50, and there wouldn't have been any problem. Yeah. Is he addicted? Yes, he's addicted, but people are just absolutely hypnotized with fear about things they just don't know anything about.
Yeah.
This is a classic case of what happens when you make things illegal that are basically irrelevant to society. There's
so much to
talk about getting arrested.
There's so much to unpack with the war on drugs that, you could spend hours every night coming up with things that the citizenry likely would be on our side if we were having these conversations, far and wide. But, between the aspect of the medicinal scheduled items, like the one that Rick got arrested for, the ones that are helping people get through addiction struggles, the ones that are helping people with pain. It's just like there's so many different aspects of this that are so tyrannical. It's a challenging issue, and I'm glad Rick is here fighting and protesting peacefully and getting arrested, and I think actually I do Ask Me Anythings regularly all over the internet, Reddit, Discord, Twitter, all of them, even the newer social media. And it's largely been a warm, even people from the other political parties have been like, yeah, we respect that Rick took a stand on that, because, they're people in office. We still have GOP in power right now that try to tell me to my face, we don't really have law enforcement that arrest people for marijuana, and
Mm.
that's their new thing, is just to just outright lie, like it's not a problem that still exists.
I've heard that before too. People up here will tell us, they'll be like, people don't go to jail for marijuana. And it's
And here's
like,
the real hypocrisy is that a number of them now in the legislature are making money off of the medical program and MedFarm. So it's like this huge market distortion that they're saying it's okay for this company and these patients to grow marijuana and sell marijuana and use marijuana, but it's not okay for, anyone that doesn't get this card. Which another problem that comes along with that is, the last time I checked, you still had to give up your right to carry a firearm if you got that medical card. Is that still the case, Rick? I think it is.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the case. I like to joke that you can get a card to make it legal for you to buy and to consume marijuana, but then you can't defend yourself against the people who want to steal it from you.
I mean, it's true. It's funny, but it's sad and true.
It's a very strange world, and for me, that's actually the number one issue that I have in my life. I want on my tombstone, I want to say, here lies the man who ended the war on drugs.
nice.
Because if you just look at it rationally and historically, which is what I like to do, I can't think of any mistake that America has ever made which is a worse mistake than the war on drugs. And the good news is we're winning. Okay, I mean, the people that are the drug warriors out there, they've actually already lost, but they remind me of those Japanese soldiers after World War II that 50 years later they were still on the island. They were still like defending the empire. Because the emperor himself had not told them to surrender. And those are the drug warriors. I mean, these guys are literally, I don't even know how to describe them. I know that our own Senator Chuck Grassley is an extremely old person. I don't hold that against him, and I hope that I'm as capable as he is when I'm as old as he is. But you got to be able to learn, okay? If you got to be able to look at the stats, the statistics. You got to be able to look at the knowledge that a lot of people have accumulated over time, and you have to be able to change your mind, and that's just simply impossible for some people. I don't know exactly why not.
I don't know if it was an Iowa guy or if it was a Nebraska guy recently, but they were still literally claiming that medical marijuana wasn't a medicine and it had no medicinal value. I think it was a Nebraska guy, but anyway, it's like, how do you even with a straight face say that in 2020?
I think Branstad and Reynolds tried to hold that position for as long as humanly possible, and I'm sure there still are some people that try. But yeah, no, I mean, even if we could shift gears to a big thing, everywhere we go in small towns, we've had people come up and say, yeah, I want to start a dispensary. And, right now you can't do that. You can't, people are begging for competition and you can't compete. That's the most tightly controlled market that you could possibly have is prohibition. And, I know that it's a challenge because then you start talking about the legislature is going to want to tax this. But if you get people like us and anyone like us in power, we can have those conversations and show people that wherever they've created a gray market via excessive taxation, that causes nearly as many problems as a black market. So the one benefit of Iowa being so far behind is we can learn, and hopefully we do and can learn from other states' mistakes. And it could really be a chance to lower spending and increase the revenue at the same time through an intelligent, minimally taxed cannabis market with low barrier to entry. And then you can use that to do things like continue to phase out the income tax to nothing, continue to lower the tax burden for people, because that's really the only way you do it, right? It's simple. You either got to cut spending or you got to increase revenue. And the war on drugs, I see, as a way to do both. You decrease the spending that is the cost of maintaining the drug war, and you raise revenue via very measured and straightforward excise taxes.
Or I would just want to jump in and say, here's where Marco and I disagree. There obviously should be no tax on marijuana. It's a nonsensical tax. You shouldn't tax things that create criminals out of whole cloth, and that's why you shouldn't tax marijuana. We don't tax aspirin. Why should you tax marijuana?
Yeah. I mean, I in general agree. I just see as we're going to have to convince the legislature one way or another how to reduce the tax burdens across the board, and I see excise taxes as one way to do that.
Well, you know what? I believe sin should be punished by the Almighty, and it shouldn't be punished by the state, because excise tax is just a sin tax.
Yeah,
And
that's
if
fair.
you're smoking cigarettes, that's bad for you. I'm going to take money away from your pocket. It's like, oh, well,
They won't
Yeah.
let me smoke Juuls anymore.
Well-
so what am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
just
that's another.
let me
you know,
die, okay, and then you won't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, black market cigarette sales are still they're still on that list behind drug trafficking and human trafficking. Cigarettes are still big money.
Yeah, everybody from Illinois that lives close to the river drives across the bridge and buys their cigarettes.
Next, it'll be vape cartridges on the.
And they're-
That's what black market vape cartridges. That's all they're making.
At some point, tobacco could get so expensive, people start growing it.
Yeah.
I would like to look into that, get a license to cultivate tobacco. I'm not quite sure where the law stands right now, but
Yeah, you're probably right. The government's got its hands on that. You probably need some special tax stamp or something.
Yeah. So I was at the Capitol earlier today. There was a rally that was about reproductive issues, and even there, people start talking about the other issues. Like, not everyone that shows up to these big rallies, they're not on the same page across the board. They're not all Democrats or all Republicans, and they come together on a cause. So you start talking about all kinds of issues, and a big one I got into was like, when people are hurting the way they are now, when our pocketbooks, inflation's out of control, everything's costing more. The things that go down are volunteering, charity, tipping. So to me, that's our biggest case for addressing these issues. And like Rick just sent out an email about it. Having a surplus is not so much a good thing when you should be giving that money back to taxpayers. And I really appreciated that going out. We got endorsed by Jesse Ventura, who was governor of Minnesota, and he became notable for doing that in Minnesota. When the government, takes in more money than they need for services, they started giving it back to the people. And I don't see, in times like these, why are you hoarding, people's money? They really need it right now, just for fresh food, for gas to get around. So we shouldn't ever be hoarding people's money, but more so now than ever. We haven't seen times like this in my lifetime. I know just before I was born in '85, we had inflation that rivaled this, and the way we got through it then was lower the tax burden and things.
Amnesty for 10 million Mexicans too. I know. I love. You know what? I honestly, and we can kind of pivot this into what you guys think about immigration. But I just want to say, I keep seeing this constantly where, I don't know about Iowa's economics, I guess, but up here, we've got like 30,000 job openings right now, and there's a couple huge meat processors that are looking at building huge facilities up here. And one of the big questions people keep bringing up, they're like, well, where would you even get the people to work at these places? You're talking about over 1,000 people working at this facility, and you got 30,000 job openings. And one of the things I never hear talked about, especially living in such a red state up here, is immigration. It's like, well,
Yep.
Where do you think you're going to fill these positions at?
It's immigrants, it's refugees, it's formerly incarcerated people. Those are the people that are gonna solve the jobs problem, and there's literally no one else to solve it. Especially in Iowa, we have a very we have the oldest, aging population in the country. So it's not like you might pull a few people out of retirement to work some jobs because they have to, but where are the you have to pull from somewhere, and things like immigration and refugees and people that were incarcerated through occupational licensing reform is one way that you can make it easier for someone that has a felony or a criminal record to get into the workforce or to become a professional at something new.
What about you, Rick? What are your thoughts in general about immigration policy or something?
I've had the same immigration proposal for since 2014. Um, we should sell permanent lifetime green cards for $50,000 a piece, and everyone else that wants to come to America, welcome in. You're a tourist, you can't work. I'd love to have you here. Stay at my hotel, eat my restaurant meals, go to Disneyland, go skiing in Colorado. We love tourists. If you'd like to work, it's $50,000, and you can work for the rest of your life, and you'll pay taxes like every other American. That money will be used to starting to pay off the national debt, so we can get rid of a little bit of that. And it should be a happy place for everybody because people they come to America for economic opportunity. They aren't coming here because they like the weather. They come for economic opportunity. Well, that's great. We have great economic opportunity because in the past we've had a good government that allowed the free market to flourish and to create jobs and to grow the economy. But we should just sell that for $50,000. It doesn't make you a citizen, but it does mean that you can work here. And if you don't have $50,000 in cash, well, you can borrow it. Maybe your employer will lend it to you. I don't know, but there's 1,000 ways to get that money. And then we can regulate the number of people that come in every year to a reasonable level. I don't know what exactly that level is, but certainly if there's jobs going unfilled, then we need to sell a few more cards. Maybe in times of recession, we don't sell so many. But it's very easy to regulate. It's so simple to use, to implement. Everybody is at peace. There's no more illegal aliens. You're either a tourist or you're working. And if you're working, we got your 50 grand and you're legal. So people always, politicians especially, they don't like to solve problems because if they have a problem, they can pretend that the other guy caused it. And then they can argue back and forth about like who's bad, who's good. And if they solved the problem, they wouldn't have anything to argue about. And then they wouldn't have anything to say how bad the other guy was. And that's just what they like to do. Excuse me, Marco. I was a CEO, right? I didn't try and run the company so that half the people hated me. But 50%, they voted for me to be the CEO. I ran the company so that everybody liked me. Now, I wasn't 100% successful because we had a job to do, but that's the way a governor should behave. The governor should run the state as a CEO, trying to solve problems for everybody and actually solve problems. And usually the way you solve a problem these days is you undo the reason that they have the problem, which is the government. I mean, it's the government that said you can't work here. They made people illegal. Didn't used to be that way. It used to just come to America and you got a job. And that was like, hey, happy for you, right? A lot of racist stuff went on back in the 20s, and then we decided, we can't have any of those slant-eyed, Chinese folks working here. And actually, a lot of it was, the Irish they're all drunks. You can't trust an Irishman. The problem was created by government, and the best way to solve it is to undo the problem. $50,000 lifetime green card. Everybody else is a tourist. Welcome to America. It's a great.
Like so many other issues, it's still a way to fundraise, build the wall, raised a lot of money. And I would hear that campaigning around Iowa for attorney general of all things. And I see, with my own eyes, the people that are getting paid to work as farm laborers and the people that are, you have people that are prominent political party members that are housing people that are getting paid under the table and incentivizing immigration while donating funds to people that are saying, build the wall. Let's limit immigration to the slowest crawl that it's been. Let's have zero refugees, all the while incentivizing the very process of paying people for their labor and, avoiding the government. So it's a huge hypocrisy that we see here in Iowa, and it really hurts people because to me, you can't really negotiate with your boss or grow economically if you're always under that fear of who else is going to pay me under the table or who's going to report me and send me to the authorities and all this. So yeah, it's like you have all these people living underground in Iowa that can't really have a say and still get incentivized by some of the very people that are holding up the process to make it easier to have upward economic mobility.
So, on the criminal justice front, what are the laws down in Iowa for civil asset forfeiture? Is that a program they use down there? Is that abused? I know they abuse it up in South Dakota where they can find a small amount of drugs, and then like I've even heard truck drivers having their semis stolen from them because they found some small amount of drugs in their glove compartment or et cetera. What does that look like in Iowa?
My understanding is it's still pretty bad. They can seize cash, right? If you just have a large amount of cash, I've heard of that happening, and then it's a real fight to get your property back, even if you did nothing wrong. They don't prove that you did anything wrong. But yeah, and it's only going to get worse if, at least in Iowa, one thing that we do tend to have common ground with the legislature is what they've been doing on the Second Amendment. So thankfully, when you're passing through Iowa, you're not going to have, additional property that can get seized with illegal firearms or things of that nature, but up to a certain point anyway. But as far as civil asset forfeiture in general, I know Waterloo, Cedar Falls is still a huge amount of money that they gain through civil asset forfeiture, and I believe Cedar Rapids and Des Moines follow up on the list in terms of money and assets seized. I know occasionally we would still have these law enforcement agencies that post their busts, and it's especially sad when it's just like some cannabis and some rolls of cash, and they're like, look at, we got this off the streets. In my view, they took that from an entrepreneur that was very likely doing a service to their community.
And stole that guy's rent money too or something.
The first part about, from my perspective, civil asset forfeiture is, it goes right back to that discretion. So if I'm just, trying to shake down kids because I'm a cop, I want to get some arrests under my belt. And also, it's an easy way to fill a day's time, right? You don't have to do any real work if you just shake down some kids smoking pot. But anyway, whether they arrest you or not, they always take your money, and nobody ever gets it back because it's not enough money to hire a lawyer to get it back, right? They just take it. I mean, sometimes these laws seem to be designed specifically to persecute the least capable people in the society, the people at the bottom, right? Because it's like, well, let's just step on them because they're not going to yell back. And let me tell you this, as a police officer, I can guarantee you something. If you're giving me the choice of arresting a poor person or a rich person, okay, so I mean, I can't do everything. I have to pick. There's only 8 hours of work in the day, and it takes about 8 hours to arrest somebody and process them and all that kind of stuff. So I got a choice. I can arrest a rich guy or I can arrest a poor guy. I'm going to take the poor guy 100% of the time. That's just the way it is. And what ends up is that, yeah, they arrest poor people. They arrest poor people because it's easier, and everybody wants their job to be easier, and it's always easier to arrest poor guys. They're not going to hire a lawyer. They're not going to, you can bully them around a lot. They're not going to scream and call their rich uncle friend. It's so easy. And that's the kind of stuff you get if you have laws that are discretionary, and if you have laws that really lots of people break anyway, okay, then the shit always falls on the person at the bottom, and the person at the bottom is a poor person. I hate that. That's just, for me, that rips my heart out. To live in a society where we put all of our we focus all of our vengeance on people who are at the bottom of the ladder. We don't do anything except persecute these people. It drives me absolutely crazy.
I think it applies across the board to other government agencies in Iowa too. If you can't fight the DNR, you're an easy target. If you can't fight for your children, you're against a worker that's trying to take your children away, you're an easy target. If you it's just pretty much across the board. When you give someone this much power to mess with people's lives, they're going to wind up picking on the people that can fight back, that have the least ability to fight back.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's human nature. That's the way the world works. Pick on the guy that doesn't fight back.
I was just gonna say, I like that one meme I've seen recently where it says, "Well, if it's only punishable by a fine, then it's legal for a price," and that kind of highlights that. Well, if you got the means to take care of this stuff, then it doesn't even matter. If you can just write a check and it doesn't impact you in any meaningful way. Whereas, like what you're saying, a poor person, that fine has an impact. So another hot button, I won't keep you guys much longer, but another hot button topic recently with the Supreme Court decision, Roe versus Wade. Maybe what is Iowa law going to look like? Did that just automatically change, kind of like what ours did, supposedly? And then what are your guys' stance on abortion just in general?
I'll jump in. Yeah, at the state level, of course, the Republicans have to feed their base raw meat, otherwise they get restless. So they've been passing anti-abortion laws pretty regularly. They had a couple that got declared unconstitutional by the Iowa Supreme Court. But after Roe v. Wade, then before Roe v. Wade went down, the Iowa Supreme Court changed its mind. So 4 years ago, they said Iowans had a constitutional right to abortion. And then just a few weeks ago, they said, oh, no, we were wrong. They don't. And then there's another law that's I guess the fetal heartbeat law went into effect.
They call it the heartbeat bill.
Yeah, the 25 weeks thing. One of them, the governor asked the judges to consider this law again in light of the end of Roe v. Wade. And the court said, no, we don't want to. But that's exactly what the governor wanted, because they don't want to do anything before the election, right? They want to get this election under the belt, and then they'll screw with the law, because it'll be 2 more years before they have to worry about the voters remembering, and voters have a short memory. My personal position is relatively straightforward. I believe life begins at conception. If the scientists want to tell me I'm wrong, then I'm going to listen to them, because I don't like to be wrong. I prefer to be correct, and so I change my mind when I find out that I'm wrong. I think life is precious. It should be protected. It should be loved, and we should do our best to make sure that every life, starting from the very beginning, is lived with the fullest measure of the potential for a life of fulfillment. But I also don't believe that the government should have anything to do with this, for a simple reason. Some people believe that abortion is murder. Okay, I can't say it isn't. And I have to say, if you're killing something that's a life, then that does sound like murder. But on the other hand, you've got a life that's living inside a different life. And so this is the kind of moral complexity that, as soon as I think about how difficult it is to contemplate and to come up with right answers, the right answer, I say, well, the last thing we should do is allow politicians to have an opinion on this. Politicians should just stay out. They should have nothing to say about abortion. They shouldn't ban it. They shouldn't promote it. They shouldn't say you've got a right. They should say nothing. If there is a problem with that, if abortion is murder, I'm going to leave it to the hands of somebody far wiser than I to administer the punishment, and that would be the Creator. If you believe that your religion has the right answer, then you must believe in the power of your Creator to deliver the proper punishment if the punishment is necessary. And I will leave it to your Creator to do that, because I'm not wise enough to make up to decide for myself. I'm just not smart enough. I don't have the ability. I don't have the philosophical enlightenment to say life doesn't begin at conception. It begins, what, 19 weeks later? I don't know
Yeah.
how you think about that, okay? But then I just can't say that a woman who chooses herself not to um, allow the development of the fetus until birth, I don't have the enlightenment to say you need to be punished. And I don't have the enlightenment to say, and the person who helped you, they need to be punished too. Maybe that's true. Maybe you need to be punished for getting an abortion. And maybe
I,
you need to be punished for helping a woman get an abortion. But I can't do that because I am not smart enough to solve that philosophical riddle. And I trust that the God you believe in will administer the punishment which is appropriate. I don't trust any politician will have the slightest degree of input into that very, very complex question. Get it out of the politician's hands.
I might be a bit biased, but I think for this place and time, we're a really strong ticket for the Libertarian Party because every political party is having this discussion. Every political party that exists in light of the Roe versus Wade being overturned, and you know, um, I've when I was running for Attorney General, this was a big question that came up in the front of the most conservative crowds in Iowa. And um, though, we have different answers to this question, where we agree is that it should not be something that's banned and criminalized. And I have a unique perspective working in the women's prison in Iowa to see what that would mean to put women in there because they chose to have an abortion. And to me, that's not the answer that anyone is really looking for. And I think when I've talked to people that have been fighting their whole lives for pro-life causes, and at the end of the day, when they really have to think about this issue and not just give the easy answer of I'm pro-life or I'm pro-choice, they're say, wait a minute, I don't want a woman that has gone through this trying time in her life to be a criminal now because of it. So um, a lot of people came through the liberty movement via Dr. Ron Paul. And even when he got pressed on the Tonight Show, I think it was, he said he wouldn't force one of his daughters to go through with a rape situation where she became pregnant. And I'm sure that upset, you're always going to upset people that are in one camp that really want the government to force their way on the other camp. And I think that's where our common ground exists in the Libertarian Party, is if we can agree that we don't want the state to go and point guns at people and investigate miscarriages and things like that. Like, what is this? If you're going to advocate for a new law to be passed, you should be able to tell me what that really means and what that's going to look like. And, Reynolds she's had this issue for decades of her middle years of her life, and she still hasn't given the people a solid answer as to what this law is actually going to look like. And that's what the legislature is going to have to do realistically in the next session. And I think if you have a ticket, the people could only be so lucky to have a ticket like us that give this issue nuanced discussion and rational thought, as opposed to the easy answer of falling into one or two camps, and then you want the government to go point guns at people and tell them that's the way.
So I'll just kind of do a fun question since we kind of went deep there for a second. And abortion is one of my least favorite topics to talk about, to be quite honest with you. But when you're running for office, it just seems like that's one of the biggest questions people always want to know. But just for fun, and I might already know your guys' answer to this question, but if you could change one law in Iowa, when you get elected this November, what would it be?
I'll go first because I actually have to go have dinner with my family. I've been out all day, but I'll check out after that and let Rick answer. But for me, let's take that first big blow at ending the drug war, and let's end prohibition of cannabis and expand the hemp market.
Good answer.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming on, Marco.
Yep, thank you guys. Have a good night, y'all.
See ya. All right, Rick, what are you getting rid of?
Yeah, it's drug war for me. I would go much further than that, right? It's my topic. And so if you want to talk about meth and why it should be legal, let's talk. If you want to talk about heroin, why it should be legal, let's talk. You want to talk about cocaine, let's talk. Because they all should be legal. You should be able to buy them over the counter without a prescription, and you should be able to get them at a price that's good enough that if you're poor, you can afford them. That doesn't mean I think you should go out and buy coke or meth or heroin. It just means that it's irrational to make them illegal, because what you create is you create criminals out of whole cloth. In other words, under my system, there are no criminals. There's some people that are messed up. There are
Yeah.
people today that are messed up, but today there are people that are messed up, and then there's this whole world of criminality that costs an enormous amount of money. It distorts all these decisions, and it's absolutely insane to think that heroin is somehow or another more dangerous than sugar, when there's no facts on the ground that support that. Sugar is the most dangerous drug in the world. Period. We know that. It's extremely addictive. How do we know that? We know that because 43% of the people in the United States are obese. There's not 43% of the people in America that are doing heroin. No, sure. I mean, sugar is literally an addictive drug, chemical.
Right.
I don't like to call them drugs. I like to call them chemicals. Sugar's an extremely addictive chemical. Almost nobody can quit once they get started. It's a lifetime habit. I mean, it's phenomenal when you look at what the negative effect is on people's health. It's just, I don't know. You can't count how many people it's just really, really negative in their lives. But you know what? We've learned to live with it, right? We just learned to say, like, maybe you shouldn't eat so much, but it's your choice. You're slowly destroying yourself, but we're not going to shame you, and we're not going to throw you in prison. We're not going to try and beat the truth into your head. We're going to allow you to make choices. And if they're not good, the negativity is going to inure to you, and it's not going to inure to society. So, gee, we wish you wouldn't, but we're going to let you. And we do exactly the same thing, of course, with a couple of other dangerous chemicals, alcohol and tobacco, right? And then we have this other class. Every other drug, I don't care what it is. Fentanyl is safer than alcohol. My mom died a fentanyl addict, right? Yeah, no, she had a fentanyl patch on her arm. She died when she was 100 years old.
Wow.
And she had a fentanyl patch. She was addicted, and my mom was pretty sharp. Okay, she didn't start deteriorating until I think about 99. But she said, "Why do I care if I'm addicted to fentanyl when I die? I don't want the pain." She had a rational, that's a rational thought. Of course, there are going to be people who abuse something, and the drugs that are currently illegal, they're going to abuse them. They already are. They name all the people that want to go out and abuse cocaine that haven't gone out and abused cocaine. No, okay, that'd be zero, right? We live in the world where the population, because of the drug war, has been hypnotized to have this fantastic fear of these drugs that are only interesting to a very tiny number of people. But those are the ones that we talk about. That's the ones that the newspapers talk about. That's the ones that the TVs talk about. That's the ones that the cops talk about. That's the ones that the politicians talk about. And it's complete BS. They are not the dangerous drugs in the world. The dangerous drugs we know already. And we can live with them. And we can live with like legal meth, legal heroin, legal fentanyl. It's not hard. It's very simple. It's the right thing to do, and I would change that. That's what I'm firmly convinced, and that's the most important thing.
Well, I definitely agree with that 100%. That kind of is what got me involved in politics myself. Just kind of getting in trouble at a young age, doing drugs. Um, and then obviously I'm not doing them anymore 20 years later, but that kind of what drew me to the Libertarian Party, because I always kind of knew that it might have been morally questionable to do some of those things, but uh, it shouldn't have been a prisonable offense.
It's just unfathomable how you could go down that rabbit hole and have an entire world that somehow or another believes these myths about these chemicals. It's every single one. It's just unbelievable.
Well, And you address one of the things I think that's important too, because when you're talking about cheap access to these drugs, you get rid of 90% of that criminal element.
I think
You
you
know,
get rid of 100% of it.
yeah,
What's the criminal going to do? There's nothing to sell.
yeah. You don't need to rob. You don't need to steal. You don't need to sell
No,
drugs either. You don't need to do any of that stuff.
just go down and buy it like you go to the Quick Trip and buy your Monster drink.
Right.
I mean, everybody can afford at least 1 or 2 Monster drinks a day, and they can afford all their drugs every day. Most people, take drugs for recreational purposes. There are a tiny, tiny, tiny number of people who go overboard, but it's so small, and all we have to do is to normalize it, and the total usage will probably go down. We know this is just news that's come in the last week or two that the youth use of marijuana in Colorado is half what it was before they made it legal. So it looks like our Governor Reynolds, she always comes out with, "Well, I believe marijuana is a gateway drug," and I'm like, no, marijuana prohibition is a gateway drug, because when you prohibit it, twice as many kids use it. That's the gateway drug. It's not the product. It's the fact that it's illegal and that it's cool and that it's exciting and that it's grown up. That's what makes it attractive. Get rid of that BS. Just relax. There's going to be drunks. There's going to be heroin addicts. There's going to be crackheads. There's going to be people. We don't care because they're already here, and I don't want to be their $40,000 a year babysitter.
Yeah.
I love them. I love every single one of them. I'm not afraid of them. I don't want to punish them. I don't want to grab them by the ear and say, well, I know this is what's better for you than what you're doing. I'm going to put you into a treatment program. I just want to make those kinds of things available for people when they decide that they're ready to change their life a little bit. Just like I'm in favor of having places where, you can't smoke there. People that can smoke, they can go somewhere else. I want to be in a place where there's nobody smoking so that I'm not tempted. That's great. That's fantastic. If bars go, like we don't allow people to smoke meth right here in the bar, thank you very much. That's fine with me. I don't really want to go to that place where people are shooting up. It sort of makes me a little queasy in my stomach. I've watched plenty of people shoot up. I've had way too many friends that shot up way too many times, and I've only lost a few. But it's not. I don't want to hang out with them. Let's just put it that way. If you want to shoot up, go shoot up. Then you come over to my house later. But it's like by making all this criminal and by making it, it's like a religion to think somehow or another that people that are doing things that I don't do, that they're on the wrong path towards heavenly salvation, and it's my job to correct them and to arrest them. I said, what the hell, man? I have to arrest them, and then I have to take their kids away from them, and then I have to force them to go get some treatment, and then I have to pay their spouse welfare because he or she's got too many kids at home, they can't work. So it's like this whole repercussion event. And what have I accomplished? What have I accomplished?
You got one person off drugs.
They're not even off drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It just cracks me up. It's so hypnotic. But I will say this, I'm 70 years old, and I've got 6 kids, and my 6 kids have experimented with a lot of drugs in their lifetimes. But when I talk about heroin, they themselves are petrified of the idea. Right? For them, it's a mythical, magical, mysterious product which you don't even want to think about. You can think about legalizing marijuana, but not that. It's such BS. Heroin was perfectly legal up until about 1913. Just buy it in the drugstore.
Yeah, pretty much every street drug has a pharmaceutical version of it, basically.
Well, yeah.
Heroin's nothing more than a basic version of all these opiates that they're shoving down people's throats.
You know what's amazing about opioids? They intentionally make them more dangerous by mixing them up with acetaminophen or ibuprofen. Both of those are drugs you do not want to take very much of, right? You can take heroin every day; it's no big deal. There's no negative effect to taking heroin, as long as it's real heroin. You can't buy the stuff on the street. I'm not saying you can go out and buy it because, well, you can't. There's no more heroin left in America. Here's a hint. It's all fentanyl. But they intentionally mix it up with acetaminophen. You cannot take large quantities of acetaminophen for very long without experiencing extreme problems, mostly in the liver.
Yeah.
I've got a brother-in-law who did that. He didn't take opioids plus acetaminophen. He just took too much acetaminophen, and he's got super liver problems. Well, they took a really safe product, an opioid, and they mixed it with a really dangerous product, so you'd use less of the opioid. Well, who dreams up this stuff? It's bizarre. You can go all through everything else too. You can go just march through every single drug, and the real story of those drugs is nothing at all like the story that gets told and that everybody buys into. I think I sort of have a genetic predisposition to investigate this stuff. The very first paper I ever wrote as a student in 7th grade, you had to write some kind of a paper, and I wrote it on heroin.
Nice.
Because it was such a wow, let's think about this thing. And I've been thinking about it ever since. And I've had.
How did your teacher react to that?
I think I got an A.
Oh, nice.
A long time ago. I only had 2 sources: Life magazine and Britannica.
Nice.
Before the government could propagandize it. Well, even then it was there, but it was before Nixon's drug war. It was Life magazine. You can still. I've read it recently. I just look it up and find it, and it's like, oh, but it's like a white couple, right? They were heroin addicts and they were artists or something, and it was definitely like, oh, this is bad, but it took a long time to hypnotize the whole country. Yeah, it took a long time. So sad though. Anyway, it's one great frustration of mine is that you can't persuade people with logic. You can't persuade people with facts. You can't persuade people with data. You have to somehow persuade them with emotions. Most people don't use drugs, of course. I mean, only 10% of the entire population uses drugs. Yeah. And that's just because a lot of people smoke pot. The number of people that use drugs other than pot is much smaller than that. Well, you're fighting 90% of the people that don't know anybody that uses drugs because they're stupid. Yeah. They don't know their own children. They don't know their own grandchildren. They don't know their friends. But they have made a choice for themselves, which is I don't do drugs, and therefore you can't persuade them that drugs are not bad. They have to believe that drugs are evil, and it's an emotional thing. It validates the decision that they themselves made, and the only way you'll ever change their mind is if you have to capture their emotions. I hate that with a passion because I'm a very emotional person, but I try not to make my decisions emotionally. I try to make my decisions rationally, and so it's very frustrating that you can't make a rational argument against these things and change people's minds. But maybe I plan on living a long time. I'm looking for the magic key, right? How can I do something that your heart goes, oh gosh, you're so right. We got to quit this craziness.
Well, I know one thing when it comes to opiates that's kind of a good talking point is how they've really restricted access to opiates so bad. And this doesn't necessarily help end the war on drugs in general, but they've restricted access to opiates so bad that a lot of people, you hear stories where they're legitimate pain patients, but they can't get the meds they need because the government's made it so hard, and come down on these doctors, making them fill out the logs at the pharmacy, who's getting what, So I kind of like that where, you can kind of talk about that kind of as emotional, you you get some of those people that are real chronic pain sufferers and they can't access the meds that they need. But, if we followed the Rick Stewart plan and just ended the war on drugs in general, then they would have no issues.
I could finally retire. I did retire once, right? But then I discovered how basically how weak the political parties are and how incompetent they are. And as soon as I saw them up close and personal, I'm like, these guys. If I can't beat these guys, it's bad on me. These politicians are not clever. They're not bright. They know how to win elections, but for the most part, they're very dull people.
No, they just seem to have cornered the market or have brainwashed the masses that just buy into this two-party system, that just they're partisan, where they have to vote based on that party. And we've seen that even in certain races where a libertarian candidate would do a little bit worse than the independent candidate in the race, even though the libertarian candidate was a much better, much stronger candidate. It's just, you got to educate the voters, get the word out.
I'm happy to say that I've never been beaten by an independent.
No? Good. Maybe they were a weak candidate then.
Last time, who thought she was going to change the world, and she actually said to me that if I don't get more votes than you, I'm never going to run again. Guess what? Okay, that means you're never going to run again. And I got 3 times as many votes.
Nice.
The first time I ran, there were 4 other independents running against me, and I got more votes than all 4 of them combined.
Wow.
But I'm retired, so I have a lot of time to campaign.
Yeah.
And when I am running for office, I campaign real hard. Now I don't have the money, so I can't do the magic. But I campaigned real hard. In 2014, I rode my bicycle to 99 Iowa counties, and I interviewed at 200 newspapers. And I just barely touched the radio and TV that time around. But I beat the other 4 independents by a long shot, all of them combined. And then when I ran for sheriff, I did spend money, my own money, but it's just a county, so you can advertise real small.
Yeah,
you can do. It was a good environment to try, and I learned how not to spend money, and I learned how to spend money. But it was all my own. I didn't take a single donation from anybody. And then for Secretary of Ag, of course, I'm not going to spend a lot of money on running for Secretary of Ag, but I had fun. I went to every TV station, every radio station, and probably 50 newspapers in Iowa that year, just driving around. And I figured out how the TV and the radio things work, right? And and then this year, for Senate 2 years ago, it was a warm up for this. This is the race. We need 2% in the governor's race and in the presidential race. We've never done it in the governor's race. I've never gotten below 2%, but I've never run for governor before. So I did 1 year of prep in 2020. I just doing the same thing I always do, all the TV stations, all the radio stations, not spending money. And then this year I'm spending money, hopefully not my own. If I throw $1 million down on the table, I will say thank you very much.
Yeah, we could do a lot with a small amount of money as a smaller party. Like $100,000 would do a ton,
Oh yeah.
I'm always a little shocked. We have a couple establishment candidates here, been in DC for 20 years, etc. And these guys have $10 million war chests. Yeah. And we've had these conversations where it's like, what would you even do? Iowa's a little more metro, got probably quite a bit more population than South Dakota. But in South Dakota, what would you even spend $10 million on? Like, you could literally send mailers every month to every person in the state, and you wouldn't spend anywhere close to $10 million.
Well, I know the answer to that question. Most of the money is just spent on TV, and they don't buy it cheap. They just pay as much as the people who run these campaigns, the professionals, right? They will spend whatever you raise, and they'll always tell you that you need more. right?
Yeah.
And because they make a cut off of all that. I mean, that's their profession, is not being a politician. It's running political campaigns. And so, I figured out TV myself in 2000 and when I ran for sheriff, I figured out TV. The answer to that question is they just waste it, and they wasted it. Whatever is the easiest way to waste money, they do that. And the easiest way to waste money is TV ads. You can literally you have a choice sometimes of for a TV ad of paying $20 or $10,000 for the same damn ad. That's the way TV works.
Wow.
How much do you think it costs to put an ad in on Fox News in Washington D.C.? 30-second television ad.
A couple
It's
$100,000.
national, yeah. It's probably
No,
100,
it's Washington
couple
D.C.
$100,000.
It's not national. It's Washington D.C.
Oh,
Just okay. We'll say $50,000 then.
Well, I put 480 ads up, and my average price was $40.
yeah.
Oh, nice.
MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, Fox Business News. I could have spent $1 million for exactly the same ads if I wanted to, but I chose not to. Yeah, TV is weird. It's extremely weird, and there's a right way to buy it, and there's a wrong way to buy it. And every politician with money is too stupid to know that their campaign team is just wasting their money and they're buying the ads in the wrong way. It's a very strange business. I was a businessman, right? That's where I made my money. I was a communist who went into business and went to school and became a capitalist. I always loved the idea, right? But I thought that if we all get together and work communally, we won't. I mean, I live very simply. I don't need my own washing machine in my own house. I'm more than happy to live in a communal situation with my own bedroom and my own study, and share the washing machine in the kitchen. But I learned that that doesn't really work very well, and over the course of time. And I got my MBA from the University of Chicago, which doesn't make me an economist, but it does, it makes me think as hard as I can like an economist. When it's my job to buy TV ads, I study how to buy TV ads. And it's very easy to spend $1 million, but it's completely worthless. Spend 10,000 and you'll get the same effect. You know what you can do now? This is really interesting. This is brand new. I can create a TV ad and I can put it on your TV. Just both of you.
Wow.
Assuming that if you have a smart TV.
Mm-hmm.
You have a smart TV in your house?
Yeah.
Yep. Devin, do you have a smart TV?
Yeah.
I can put an ad on your TV.
I did not know that.
I have to put the same ad on 5,000 other TVs, but I can just put you in my group. This is the government's way of protecting your privacy.
Yeah.
I have to give it to 5,000 people. I can't just give it to you. Yeah. And you know what that TV ad is going to cost me to put on your TV? $0.05.
No idea. Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. You know how much this business card cost me?
A penny.
4 cents.
10 cents. 4 cents.
I can put a TV ad, I can put a 60-second TV ad on your TV for a nickel.
That's pretty crazy.
That's a pretty good deal. Is it like a nickel every time we see it, or is it
it's the kind of ad that you can't skip. Okay.
Okay.
You can go to the kitchen and get a beer, but you can't.
That's it. I don't like Rick Stewart as a candidate. Can't skip your ad.
It's pretty amazing. The thing is, when people watch TV, they don't know why the ad is there. But there are many reasons why the ad is there. Yeah. And the person who doesn't understand this will just spend far too much money to do something that's completely bizarre. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like you think like a Super Bowl ad,
Well, it's definitely good to know.
Made any money off of putting a Super Bowl. It's an ego thing. It's not an advertising thing. No. But if you're let's just say you're in charge of marketing for the Budweiser, you've got a budget which is so big that you couldn't spend it all if you didn't advertise on the Super Bowl. They're just using up money. If they spend it or lose it. And so that's what they do. But politicians are different. Politicians are just stupid. Politicians, they get taken. No, seriously, it's a very strange phenomenon. Politicians are not experts in marketing. They turn that whole thing over to their campaign team, and these guys are they're like sharks in the water. They suck up every nickel that the politician gets, and they don't really care whether you win or lose.
Well, it sounds like politicians, they just don't care where the money goes, what it's spent on.
No. just give me more.
Yeah.
By the way, if my opponent wins, all hell's going to break loose, and you're going to lose your car and your house and your wife and your kids and everything else. So by God, you better vote for me. I'm not going to tell you why, but that's why. It's very bizarre.
Come out with some ads and be like, your 401k is in jeopardy. Vote Rick Stewart. You know?
Oh yeah, exactly. Scared to death. I was always a completely different kind of person. In my company, I believed in consensus. I wanted everybody to understand what we're doing. I wanted them to have input into what we're doing, because a lot of times, I have 10 good ideas every day, but I don't know which 9 of them suck. And so you need to have other people around you that tell you the ones that suck and talk you out of it. And in a company that's being run by consensus, if I let my ego make the decisions, I have a huge ego. I mean, I'm incredibly smart. I'm incredibly intuitive. I'm incredibly persuasive. But I need to let other people tamp me down a lot. And the only way you can do that is if you make it easy for them to do that. If you make it easy for them to tell you you're wrong, and you're like, geez, I hate you today, but I'm really glad you told me, because otherwise I'd be doing it and it'd suck. That's my mentality is like, I'll change my mind every time I find out I'm wrong, and please tell me when I'm wrong. And I'll argue with you, but you're going to win a lot, because like I said, I got 10 great ideas every day, just 9 of them suck. And I think the government should operate the same way. If you run the government like a company, then you don't have everybody mad at you. You don't have everybody, with these little, I hate Rick mottos. Who I want to talk to? I want to talk to the people who hate me. Because the people that like me, they already like me. I want to talk to the people who hate me. If I'm the governor of the state, I'm going to invite everybody that doesn't like Rick. People call Kim Reynolds, they call her COVID Kim, right? Yeah. There's always a new way to hate, right? And I'm going to take, I'm going to say everybody that doesn't like me is invited. We're going to have a party at my office in the governor's mansion, and we're going to live stream it. And I'm going to talk with every one of you. Okay. And I know there's a lot of people that, they're not the right people to be in the crowd. I'm going to have to cut them off. But everybody else is going to go, yeah, cut her off. Shut her up. She doesn't know what she's talking about. That's what happens when you allow everybody to participate in a conversation. The weirdos are, everybody likes them and they're funny, but you don't give them half an hour, right? Mm-hmm. They get their 60 seconds of fame, and then you have a serious discussion. And everybody's there and they're listening. When's the last time you got to listen in on the backroom discussions of a state legislature? Never. Hell yeah, I'll live stream the whole thing. I'll be glad to live stream the whole thing, because when everybody gets to listen, they get it. They understand. Like, well, he might be wrong, but I still like him. That's the way it should be. People should like their politicians.
Good life. Wouldn't that be something to see? I saw you were recently you've been doing a lot of campaigning. You were recently in Sioux City. Next time you get over there, you have to let me know. I'm only about an hour north of that. So
I will get up to Sioux Falls.
Yeah?
Yeah, because there's either 2 or 3 TV stations. I forget. What are they?
Kello TV.
Kello,
yeah. Kelloland.
Like a Dakota News Now.
Yeah, there's one.
No, I will definitely get up there. I've been on Kello, I think, only once. There's a trick to getting on, but you don't always succeed. Because those are what we call local TV, right? They operate. It's a business model. They operate in a certain way. This is how they make their money. This is the job titles of the people who work there. This is how it works. And I've just always been a curious guy who likes to figure out how business works. So I know exactly how local TV works. And I know how to get on it, but not 100%. but one of the other ones there, every time I go up, I get on that one. And radio's different, and it's like, it's like you just got to crack the code. I've never paid to be on TV. I've never paid to be on the radio up there. But I love to go up to Sioux Falls. Not very much of what they broadcast goes into Iowa, but I try and get everybody. I go down into Quincy, Illinois. I go up into Austin, Minnesota. That's the cheapest way for me to get my face and my name in front of people, is to tap into the free local TV and the local radio stations and the local newspapers. And I love doing it. Yeah, that's the most fun part of the whole job, is once you get in. Like when I went to Sioux City, I went on a Thursday, and you don't make an appointment. You let them know you're coming, and you invite them to cover you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get anybody to fall on Thursday. I wake up, I'm like, oh shit, because I had a parade I was going to be in, so that's okay. But that's not why I went there. I went there. Of course, I do parades. I've done 25 parades. I'm going to do a parade in Sioux City, but I wanted to get TV. So on Friday morning, I wake up and I make another phone call, and bingo, got one, right? He said, be here at this certain time. Now it's like, okay, it's not a complete waste. Well, a couple hours later, bingo, got a second one. And I made that last call about noon. And they said, we've already got a guy down there by the museum. So, you do it there. So I got all three.
Nice. I saw you got quite a bit of coverage.
That's what I do. I get on these TV stations. I'm a business person, and I love to understand how businesses work. You put me in a coffee shop, and I'm going to be figuring out how this coffee shop makes money, or if they don't make money. That's the way I think. Okay. And so it's just a recipe for dealing with TV stations. And it's the same. Every single TV station in the entire state of Iowa, plus Sioux Falls, plus Quincy, Illinois, they all work exactly the same. They have they're the same business. And so once you figure it out, all it takes is work and luck to get on TV, and it's free. And it's a lot of fun when you score. And all the TV people like me, it's so strange. Do you understand that there's no politics in TV, local TV? They're completely clueless. They can't afford to have a political person. Now, maybe they will have a political person, but that's not the only thing they do. They work really hard to make stuff. Yeah. We only have a couple of political people in TV in Iowa, but they exist to make a profit. That's their goal in life, make money. And the way they make money is they sell commercials. And the way they sell commercials is they get people to watch their TV station. And the way they get people to watch their TV station, there's two things they do. One of it is they pay ABC or CBS or NBC or Fox to show their stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But the privilege of showing their stuff, they get commercials. So Fox has let's just say a 1 hour news show, and they sell their commercials, national commercials. Well, they can be regional, but the local TV doesn't get to use that space. The local TV is allocated X number of minutes every half an hour. And during those minutes, they get to sell their commercials. Mm-hmm. That's the way it works. And so their only goal in life is to sell as many commercials as possible. And the worst thing for them is when they have to put on something that might look like a commercial to you, but they didn't sell it. It's just their own stuff, or they're actually doing it for free. So they will sell you a commercial for $50 if they haven't sold to anybody else. And they'll sell it to you for $5,000.
So speaking of media real quick and TV appearances, so what's it like in Iowa? Does the governor get to televise debate with the governor candidates, or do they kind of, in the past we've kind of gotten screwed over where they were like, nah, you gotta meet X number of qualifications to be on the stage?
Well, actually, that's the whole reason that I got into politics to start with, is because in 2012, I knew that Gary Johnson, I knew who he was. I knew that he was in favor of legalizing marijuana, and I met him. We're not friends, but I've spent time with Gary Johnson, just one-on-one. And so I came back to the United States in August, and I said, "How can I help Gary Johnson get as many votes as possible?" And it was painfully obvious that the easiest and the cheapest way to get votes for Gary Johnson was to get him into the presidential debates. If he got into the presidential debates, then he was going to make an impact. If he didn't, he wasn't. That's just obvious. It's just that's the way it works. So I sat down and I said, how do I get Gary Johnson to the presidential debates? And I very quickly, just sitting in my own house right here, realized that I needed to go to Washington, D.C. because the Commission on Presidential Debates was just like this totally worthless organization. So I did. I spent 6 weeks in Washington, D.C. I ran out of things to do. I came back to Iowa. I did a lot of stuff. I had a Facebook group with 2,000 members in it. I attacked the CPD in their own offices, not physically. And so I did a lot, but I'd done everything I could. I put up a fake CPD website that mimicked theirs. It looked just like theirs, except it was like mine. So I said what I wanted to say. And I came back to the States, and actually, I'll show you what I have right here. These are the 990s. They're like the income tax return for nonprofit organizations, and every one of them is 30 pages long, and they go back to, I don't know how back. They go back to 2002, and I downloaded all these and printed them out, and I've run out of ideas. I can't think of anything new to do. So I said, maybe I should look at those. It's really boring.
I heard that the Republicans pulled out of that debate commission just recently.
Yeah, well,
so I'm kind of curious how the landscape's going to change with the national debates with the presidents going forward.
That's just fake. The whole thing is fake.
Fake news.
So I sat down and I started looking at them, and I very quickly realized that I needed to make a spreadsheet. I live on spreadsheets. Okay, that's what I do. I make spreadsheets. I don't care what the job is. I make a spreadsheet, and so that's what I did. I grew up with spreadsheets. I mean, when I got my hands on the first spreadsheet, I mean, it was like a religious experience because I could do things that I could never do before because you had to do them on paper. So I grew up with early spreadsheets, and I've done them all my life ever since. It's the way I think. And so I made a spreadsheet for these guys, and within half an hour, I could prove that none of their 10 national sponsors had ever given them any money. I could prove this in black and white. Mm-hmm. Well, they did have money, and somebody gave it to them, but it was none of their 10 national sponsors. So, armed with this information, I'm in the States. I had my Facebook group start attacking them, and in 1 week, I got 3 of the national sponsors to pull out because they didn't know themselves what was going on. I knew what was going on about them. Right? It's very strange. It's a longer story, but I got 3 to pull out. I got national news. I got an article in not national news, in one of the Washington papers. Politico, the Hill, and the Roll Call. One of them did a great article on it. And I mean, I've won. This is going to be super big, but I never got a 4th sponsor to withdraw. We had people picketing at Southwest Airlines in like 9 different locations across the United States. Mm-hmm. We couldn't get them to quit because all these 7 remainders, they just dug in their heels, and they're like, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil.
Well, who wouldn't want to be a sponsor for free? You didn't have to pay for
it. You can't believe how stupid this is. One of their sponsors was the National Association of Water Bottlers. It's the trade organization for people that bottle water and sell it. Mm-hmm. And what do you think their contribution was?
I don't know.
Some bottles of water.
That's all, they just gave them some bottles of water. I'm not making this up, okay? The YWCA, National YWCA, was a sponsor. Well, It sounds big, doesn't it? The national YWCA. Wow, they must be huge. Millions of people that belong to the national YWCA. And it turns out, like, well, no, not really.
Yeah.
They're a tiny little organization. And what did they give? Well, they just gave Janet Brown, the executive director, free pass to the YWCA in Washington, D.C.
Wow, we should send them some free water bottle, Hedgehog Watchdog water bottles and a free pass.
Oh God, yeah. So anyway, because of that, I know more about the Commission on Presidential Debates than anybody in the world except Janet Brown, their executive director, and Frank Fahrenkopf, and the guy whose name I always forget, but Frank's a Republican and the other guy's a Democrat. Those three guys, they know more than I do. They're my heroes. They are brutal. They've controlled the American political system for 40 years.
Yeah.
And they've got it by the left nut. But what it is it's an unholy alliance between the Republicans and the Democrats.
Right.
They made it. It's their organization, and you can't play the game unless they say it's okay, and they do not say okay. And they've got everybody wrapped around their little fingers because they are, nobody knows how to bust it up, and they don't want to. The Democrats and Republicans don't want to bust it up, and the press is too stupid. What's his name? Unsafe at Any Speed. Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader wrote a whole book about how bad the CPD was, and he never figured out what I figured out because he didn't make the spreadsheet. They've been pretending to have these corporate sponsors for 40 years until I came along, and then I proved that they couldn't do it, that it's impossible, and so they don't have them anymore. Go online, check it out. You can see 3 blanks where they use the corporate sponsors for 2012. There's 3 empty spots. That's me.
Nice work.
Well, that's just the kind of guy I am. Is like I was a cop, but I wasn't a cop and learned how to investigate. I'm a curious guy, so it was fun being a cop. And I'm 70 years old. I have a lot of experience trying to figure out what's going on in the world, and I just tried to figure out what's going on in the CPD. I see stuff. I think in numbers. And if it doesn't make sense, it probably is wrong. And it turned out that it was wrong. I was right.
Yeah, I always hated the CPD. Regardless of the faults within the Libertarian Party, when people always ask me, well, how come you're not bigger? How come you blah, blah, blah? And it's like,
3 words.
The Commission on Presidential Debates. If we were in a debate,
it's CPD.
Yeah, if we were in a debate, we could easily get 20% of the vote. I just look back at Ross Perot got 19% of the vote in 1992, but he was included in the debates.
He was included in the debates the first time, and then they go, that was a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't let him in the second time.
Yeah. And so it's been a rigged system for sure ever since then.
Rigged. It's fake. It's completely fake. It's like everything that they say is absolutely incorrect. Every single thing. And so that's why I admire them. They get away with it. They have the media and the press wrapped around their little finger. Now, I will say this. It's my fault that I haven't put them out of business yet because, I have things I do other than politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of have 90-day ADHD. I work on something for 90 days, and then I move on to something else because it's like a new shiny object. That's what my girlfriend says. Oh, did you find a new shiny object, Rick? It's like, yeah, I did.
He's got a lot of project cars at his house.
Her name is Sheila. Hope this is not recorded. But if I would have stuck with the CPD thing and just devoted time to that, then I would have already put them out of business because the real story is not that they're what they are is very simple, but they have a 40-year history of actually deceiving the press And so the press, when they finally figure that out, is not going to be happy because they've just been pulling that for way too long. But I do other things as well. I travel a lot, and I have a place in Guatemala, and I hike volcanoes with a nonprofit organization. So I just have never done the follow through that's necessary. And you can't be a campaigner and attack the CPD at the same time. Never worked. I tried that in 2016. It's like trying to catch two fish on one fishing pole. Doesn't work. But anyway, back to Iowa. Yeah. So there's no organization in Iowa. The debates are not run by anybody. They're just, if the candidates decide they want to debate, then they have a private agreement to debate. And if they decide not to, they won't. And both parties have the power to say, no, I don't think I'll do that. So 4 years ago, they had one reasonable debate. They invited Jake Porter, the TV station did, and then they uninvited him.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I've got it right here. Governor Kim Reynolds and Fred Hubbell campaigns agree to 3 debates. Well, they only had 2, and one of them was at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. Like, I don't know about you, but you get out of bed to go to it.
At 7, yeah, which really means you got up at 5. Or...
We don't want to do it. We agreed to 3, but we're going to do 2, and we don't want to have anybody see it. And that's what's going to happen this time around. I doubt that there will even be a debate. Some people might start clamoring for it. I don't think Deidre, she's the Democratic candidate. I don't think she really wants one. She knows she's lost already. Everybody knows she's lost. She's not. She's just. They're just pretending. I'm sorry, but everybody knows, Deidre, you lost. The only people that don't know that you lost are the people that are giving you money. Everybody else knows you lost. So I don't know how much pressure she'll put on to actually have a debate. She could probably get one, but there's no way in hell they're going to let me in. Deidre, if she was smart, she would insist on me being in the debate. But since she's already lost, they're just marching in place. They don't have any money. 4 years ago, Fred Hubbell spent $20 million on the race. That was a Democrat. Deidre would be lucky if she spends 2. Yeah. So for me, the debate is almost better if you don't have one. You know how much work it takes to prepare for a debate? Oh, yeah, it's tough. You've got to spend 2 weeks, because I don't have a staff, right? If I had a staff, and there was going to be a debate, they would start preparing me like for a couple hours a day, 2 weeks in advance. But I don't have a staff. I have to prepare myself for a debate. Well, I would rather be out there trying to get votes. I mean, a debate would certainly get me votes, but preparing for one is like, oh, geez, all I have to do is screw up once and you're history. You're better. I'm actually better off if I don't appear in a debate. I think I would do okay, but only if you prepare really, really well.
I know real popular up here are like town hall forums, which I prefer that style.
I do too.
Than a traditional debate, because you're not really going after each other. You're just kind of talking about your issues,
Yeah. That reminds me, I should let the League of Women Voters know that I'm willing to show up to every one of their debates. But I don't know if they might not let you do it unless one other person shows up. And then there's also the Farm Bureau does forums.
Yeah.
And they're local, so they don't bother to invite me. But if I tell them I want to go, then they would invite me. You only get 5 minutes. Every candidate gets 5 minutes, and so you're going to be sitting there with the supervisors because it's local. But
I always like hearing the other candidates' answers too, because then you can kind of differentiate yourself just a little bit.
Yeah. But for governor, the other 2 aren't going to show up.
No,
they're not going to show up. But I try to go to everything that I can go to. This year, there's too many parades that are at the same time, and so I'm not going to be able to get to as many as I'd like. But I've already done 25 parades. Wow. Trying to do as many as they have, as long as it's on a day where I don't have a different parade. Mm-hmm. I did 3 on July 4th, but that's the one day where everybody has a parade.
Right.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I have a nice trailer it's a colorful trailer that's my float, right? I pull it in my pickup truck. If I can't find somebody to drive, I drive the damn truck, which is subpar. But if I find somebody that can drive my truck for me, then it's a fantastic way. It's practically free except for gas.
Mhm.
And you shake, I just shake hands with people and say, Rick Stewart, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Rick Stewart, nice to meet you. And the parades are well attended, and everybody on the parade sees your float because they go slow, and everybody looks at every float. You can hear the little kids going, Rick Stewart.
Yeah.
It's fun. But yeah, give me $1 million and we'll make this something different.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're coming up on about 2 hours, so I don't want to keep you any longer, but I appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about your race, and I appreciate you running for office as well. And hopefully we can meet you if you get up to Sioux Falls. Let us know.
I will definitely let you know.
Me and Devin will come have lunch with you or something.
Absolutely. And you gave some really great answers to some complex problems. Any candidates in South Dakota looking for some good, I don't know, policies, you should listen to this episode for sure if you're not already.
Well, what you guys are doing, yeah, I mean, this is great. Getting out there and making something happen is, in my life, of course, I had 300 people working for me and they got paid, so that was easy. But I tried to make it really fun for everybody. Not fun like going to the park, but like, if you don't like your job, I really want to change something because I want everyone to like their job. And I also liked it when you did something useful. It's like, we've got jobs. You want to do one? Great. Because if you do, we'll pay you. And by the way, you're going to have a great time here as long as you do your job and have a good sense of humor. So now, unfortunately, of course, I'm not paying anybody. I don't have a staff. I'm just relying on volunteers. And it's not a skill that comes naturally to me to find volunteers that'll do stuff that is very goal oriented. That's, they don't get to be the big cheese. They have to be the little cheese.
Yeah.
I just, if I could develop that skill a lot more, I would have I think a lot more success. But if I had a lot of money, I would definitely be hiring people. But trying to motivate people who don't get a paycheck to work as hard as I do is very difficult because I work, 70 or 80 hours a week, and then I eat, and then I go to bed. And I'm very energetic when I have something that I'm, when I'm on a crusade, when I'm on my ADHD path, I have a lot of energy. I'm passionate about ending the drug war, and I'm passionate about converting people to vote for libertarians. So when I meet people like you, who you've actually done something, I am so appreciative of the fact that you did something. Because if I could just find enough people who do something, we'd be running a very, very, very competitive race. But most people don't want to do something. Most people, they don't, that's okay too. But most people just don't actually do something. When I meet people that do something, I am extremely appreciative. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Same thing. I like how you guys. You're an example of a good candidate in that you're out and about. You're actively campaigning. You got your website. You're speaking of. Go ahead and promote whatever you want to promote. Tell us how people can get a hold of you, how they can join the cause, volunteer,
Super
donate.
Easy. Yep. All you need to know is my name.
Rick Stewart.
Right there on the screen. Yep. Rick Stewart.
.com.
EWART. So rickstewart.com is my website. And if you want to know more than that's on there, I try and put a lot of stuff on my website so that you learn something. Most people's political websites are just pieces of crap, right? There's nothing there. They don't even put their policies up. And if they do, they pretend to put their policies up, but they don't actually say what that means.
Yeah.
But I try and put real stuff on, and I actually engage in comment if people leave comments. But if you want to know more than that, then the easy thing to do is to just Google around, because I've been around and I was a small business person, and and I've been a politician, then it's pretty easy to find me. I've got a YouTube channel. It's RWSCID. It's got some funny videos on it, there's a lot of press out there about me. If you just search hard enough, don't stop at page 1 of Google, but use my name and then put in stuff I've run for. So Rick Stewart Sheriff, Rick Stewart Senate, Rick Stewart Secretary of Agriculture. Just start following the rabbit hole around, and you'll find out a lot about me. And I think you'll have a lot of fun. I had a guy call me up just last week that said, "We can take all that bad news about you off the front page of Google. You know that?" And I'm like, "Well, tell me what that bad news is. Did they spell my name right?" And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, how did they spell my name?" He goes, RICKSTEWART. I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I want. They spell my name right. I'm so happy. I'm glad you called me up." Because I'm sure it had something to do with my arrest. This guy's like, "Oh, you got arrested. He'd hate to have anybody know that, right?" I'm like, "I would like everybody to know what I got arrested for," which, by the way, I didn't tell you, but, protesting in front of the DEA, right? This is about the most righteous arrest you can ever get. Number one, the DEA is breaking the law. I'm enforcing the law. So if you're going to arrest me for enforcing the law that the DEA is breaking, I'm more than happy. Put me in prison. Give me a 100-year sentence. I will show up, and I will do more work from in prison than you will ever do in your lifetime. So yeah, take me.
Yeah, I definitely like that. Not necessarily just because you got arrested, but just because talk is cheap. Politicians talk, and when you actually put your butt on the line for an issue you care about, we've talked about it before, but I really like Jill Stein getting arrested a few years ago during her presidential election, and
trying to get into the debates.
And when I look at like Joe, it's like, well, what could we have done to get more media attention? Like, there's had to have been something. And in a situation where you're putting your principles out there, it's not anything to be ashamed about. So it's not,
If I'm right and they're wrong, then I don't mind getting arrested, and I will have my day in court. And the public can judge. If there's 12 jurors, I think that you're not going to find 12 people in America that think I should go to jail for what I did.
So do you got a court date, or did you just pay a fine or something?
No, we got a court date coming up. There were 17 of us, I think, and we all have one court date on August 9th. But we have a group lawyer he's working pro bono. I might have to go to Washington to show up in court, but we don't know yet. But we do have a trial date. Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck with your trial, and good luck with your campaign. We definitely hope you guys get above that 2% mark. Keep ballot access for Iowa. Keep doing good things.
Spend every day trying to make sure that's going to happen.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Rick.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Well, that was Rick Stewart. A little bit of a longer conversation. We didn't know we were going to have him on for sure. A little bit longer than we thought, but it was a good conversation. That's kind of why I wanted to do these candidate series shows, because people, he's talking about going out and doing all this media, but it's very rare that you're going to see a 2-hour interview with a candidate talking about all these different things, so I hope people watch this. We'll share it around, and hopefully some Iowa
That's what makes
people.
Podcasting better than Kelloland, because you're not going to get a 2-hour interview from Kelloland. You're going to get 15 minutes.
If you're lucky.
And what are they going to say in that 15 minutes? It's going to be like, I remember growing up on the family farm, and then like 10 minutes is just about their like childhood, blah, blah, blah. And then it's just like, you don't learn anything about the candidate. But 2 hours, dude, you're going to learn all kinds of details. So anyhow, you're not going to see Christy Nome on any
2
podcasts.
I was going to bring that up when we were talking about abortion for a second, because I was going to make fun of Christy Nome. She was on national TV this last week or whenever it was, and literally said that if a 10-year-old was raped and pregnant, that they couldn't get an abortion. It's like, what the fuck, man? Like how they were talking about Iowa having this heartbeat bill 24 weeks. Like I think South Dakota literally just bans it altogether. Like there's no exception. If you're telling me that there's no exception for rape, then there's just no exceptions at all. Like what
That's kind of so you're saying that rapists out there who want to pass on their genes can literally just do that with, and that's just gonna happen.
Yeah, it was pretty cringy. But anyway, I didn't want to necessarily go back into that topic, but
We have no choice. The goddamn Supreme Court has made this a topic now. It's just gonna be like ongoing forever. It's like we're always gonna have to talk about it. It's like, god damn, dude. God damn it, man. Of course.
I'd rather get back to talking about the drug war.
Yeah.
No, I like Rick and Marco. They're good candidates. They're good examples of libertarian candidates. You know, getting out there, spreading the word, but not compromising in their positions necessarily to make it more palatable for the voters. You know.
Right. Yeah, I like that strong. I'm about legalizing heroin, meth, and cocaine, and fentanyl.
Right? Like that's a difficult conversation to have at all, let alone if you're running for governor. Like.
Yeah. But I think he made it a very well articulated argument for it. Better than what I can do. You can tell he's got a lot of experience at 70 coming up with his talking points. Which is good. Anyhow, do we have any set guests for next week? Are we gonna just talk about the news? When are we gonna get some South Dakota candidates on?
Yeah, what's up with the South Dakota candidates? Technically, we already interviewed.
We've interviewed all our candidates already. We need to do it now that it's election season. Now that we have a candidate series, not just a regular podcast episode.
Yeah, we will definitely have Colin for Congress on sometime soon in the next couple months. I don't know when. And then, we'll get Tracy and Ashley on together. That's our governor and lieutenant governor candidate.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a cool conversation.
We were just at the 2 Pride events in Sioux Falls and Rapid City. A lot of pictures from those. I don't know if we should even show them since this is like an audio format. We'll probably just make a blog article or something.
Yeah, plus we're a little over 2 hours already. I'm kind of tired.
Yeah, let's cut it.
That was that was a marathon for us. When we first started out, we used to do like 2+ hours every week, and now it's like, oh, I'm dying.
We've already how much more libertarianism? Because when we first started, we got to talk about all our stuff, and now it's all out there already. So it's like everybody already knows what we think. So there's no point in dragging it out. But okay, we'll see you all next Sunday at 7:00. We don't know about any guests yet, but if not, Greg and I are pretty good at doing news talking points. All right, have a good one.
All right, later, guys.